Leonardo is from Florence in Italy, whose area included science, inventions, drawing, painting, sculpture, architecture, music, literature, engineering, mathematics, astronomy, and so on. Hi, it's me again. Welcome to English for Always. Today, we're gonna carry on the third part of the story, Leonardo da Vinci's by Alex Raynham. I hope that you guys will enjoy my videos like always. Now let's start right now. Number 3. Painting and Sculpture. There is a story about Leonardo when he was a young painter. One day, Leonardo was finishing a Verrocchio painting in the workshop when Verrocchio came in. Leonardo's work was beautiful, and Verrocchio knew it. "I'll never paint again," the older man said. Leonardo was not an apprentice anymore. He was one of the best young painters in Florence. Most workshops at the time used a paint that was made with eggs, but Leonardo tried a new paint, oil paint. It was possible to do more things with oil paint, and it helped him to paint deeper, brighter colors. Leonardo went outside and drew things like flowers, water, and stones. He studied these things like a scientist. He also worked with doctors to understand how our bodies work. Because of this, everything in his picture was very real. Leonardo's father helped him to open a workshop in Florence. But it was not an easy time for Leonardo. He had a lot of problems with some important people. In 1482, Leonardo left Florence and traveled to Milan. Leonardo left angry people behind him back in Florence because he had not finished paintings for them. This happened all through his life. Leonardo is one of the most famous painters in history, but he only finished about 20 paintings. This painting of Cecilia Gallerani is one of them. Leonardo was happy in Milan. He had a busy workshop with lots of young apprentices. The ruler of Milan, Ludovico Sforza, spent a lot of money on art because he wanted to show that he was as good as the rulers of places like Florence. Leonardo was given money to be a part of Sforza's court, the circle of important people who worked for him. He designed buildings and machines for Sforza. He also painted beautiful pictures like the painting of Cecilia Gallerani, Sforza's young love. In 1495, Sforza asked Leonardo to paint a picture called The Last Supper. The painting was for the wall of an important church building, and it told the story of the last meal Jesus had with his followers. It took Leonardo many months to plan the picture. He drew each person and changed how they sat or stood around a table. Leonardo's design for the painting is amazing. The lines of the walls in the real room are the same as the lines in the picture. It is like looking into another part of the same room. The Last Supper is a very big painting, 4.6 meters tall and 8.8 meters long, and it is on the very high wall. People built places for Leonardo to stand while he worked. Sometimes he worked for hours and did not stop to eat. At other times, he stood and looked at the painting for hours, but he did not touch his pens. Leonardo finally finished The Last Supper in 1498. It was one of the greatest paintings of the Renaissance. But Leonardo was worried. When he painted The Last Supper, he worked in a different way from most painters, and he made the paint in a different way too. Soon he understood his mistake. The painting started to break into pieces. When Leonardo looked at his great work, he probably thought, "It will fall off this wall in a few years." Luckily for us, people found ways to save it. At the same time, the Last Supper, Leonardo was working on a great sculpture of Ludovico Sforza's father, Francesco. Leonardo wanted to make a sculpture of Francesco on a great horse. For years, he drew horses and made designs, but there was problems. Leonardo made sculptures when he worked with Vecchio, but these sculptures were much bigger. He wanted it to be the biggest sculpture in Europe, and he needed about 60 tons, 60,000 kilograms of an expensive metal called bronze to make it. His drawings showed a walking horse with only 2 legs on the ground, but how could he put a heavy sculpture like this on 2 legs? In 1492, Leonardo made a great horse sculpture in clay. It was 7.3 meters tall, and it was amazing. People talked about the clay horse for years. But Leonardo never made a final metal sculpture. Why? Because the bronze for the horse were used to make guns. There was a war between France and Milan, and in 1499, Ludovico Sforza had to leave the city. When the French army arrived, French soldiers shot at Leonardo's clay horse and broke it into pieces. After 17 years in Milan, Leonardo left the city. When Leonardo was 52, the rulers of Florence asked him to paint a picture of a famous battle for a great building in their city. On the opposite wall, they asked Michelangelo to paint another battle. The two men were enemies. Michelangelo was only 29, but he was already famous for his amazing sculptures. One day, he laughed at Leonardo in front of people in the town square. He said that Leonardo was not a good artist because he could not build his great horse. Both men worked on their paintings, and it soon became a battle between the two most famous artists of their time. Who were the best? Everyone in Florence talked about them and waited to see their great works. But in the end, neither of them won the battle. Michelangelo made some drawings, but then he went back to Rome. Leonardo started his painting, but because of the way he painted on the wall, it soon began to break into pieces. At about the same time as he was working on the battle painting in Florence, Leonardo began a painting of a young woman called Lisa del Giocondo. Today we call it the Mona Lisa or La Gioconda. Leonardo used new ideas to paint the Mona Lisa, and other painters soon began to work in his new way. But is that why it became the most famous picture in history of art? Look at Mona Lisa's face. Is she starting to smile? Now look again. She is not smiling anymore. We look from one side of her mouth to the other. and her smile changes in front of our eyes, like the smile of a real person. What is she thinking? Because of that smile, you stop and look at the painting again. You ask yourself questions. Writers like Emile Zola and Oscar Wilde wrote about Mona Lisa's smile. They said that she was a dark and dangerous woman. Her smile hid many secrets. On 21st August 1911, a man called Vincenzo Perugia walked into the Louvre Museum in Paris. He took the Mona Lisa off the wall and put it under his coat and walked out of the building. The next day, the Mona Lisa was in newspapers around the world. When the museum opened again, thousands of visitors went to see the empty place of the wall. For 2 years, Perugia kept the painting in his house in Florence. He hid it in a box under some old clothes. Perugias were caught in 1913 when he tried to sell the painting. And the Mona Lisa then came back to Paris, but nobody forgot the story of the lost woman with a strange smile. Today, you can find the Mona Lisas in paintings by modern artists, on clothes, in films and songs, and 1,000 other places. Leonardo usually painted important people, but Lisa the Gioconda was not famous. She was just a young wife from Florence, but she became one of the most famous women in the world. Alright everyone, the video is gonna end here. I'll see you in the next one. Please give me a comment, a like, a subscribe for my channel. Thank you and have a good day.